Hello there, this is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights. We are delighted to welcome along for another one of our Saturday Spotlight interviews, Lex Rigby, who is the Head of Investigations at Viva. So welcome, Lex, and thanks very much for doing this for us.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be here.
We're going to go straight into the questions. So the first one, which we ask everyone, because the majority of us weren't born vegan. So could you tell me about your vegan journey, please?
No, exactly that. I, like many others, was not born vegan. But I think I really came to veganism through punk. I mean, it's the music subculture for me. As a kid, I listened to a lot of propaganda. And being young and impressionable, I think Chris Hanna really became like a spiritual guide to me. The band's animal friendly, anti-fascist, gay positive, and pro-feminist mantra, I think, really struck a chord with me. And these are the core values, I guess, that have shaped me and essentially who I am today.
Right. So what was it about? You kind of like the your all of this sort of thing, which kind of like you made the connection with the animals part of it.
Oh, it's really difficult because I think with this particular question, you get a lot of people that have always had like the story of this one animal that set them
Yeah,
on
yeah.
this pathway and this journey. But I think I came to it quite differently because, yeah,
Mm,
as I said, it was from the music sort of
yeah.
subculture and just learning about the
Right.
philosophy of veganism and the
Yeah.
politics around it
Uh,
that kind of put me on that path. But in terms of activism and where my background in animal rights really is,
mm,
was grown out of a passion for marine wildlife. And,
right.
specifically, I wanted to prevent whales from being killed in Antarctica. That was like my single
Mm,
issue at the time. I really
yeah.
wanted to take some kind of action to stop that massacre from happening.
Yeah. Now that sounds a pretty gruesome one. I mean, obviously, I've spoken to other activists who've done things like the Faroe Islands and and Greenpeace and the Captain Paul Watson. So I can imagine that those ones, particularly seeing those big animals,
Yeah.
must have been pretty horrific for you to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spent more than a decade campaigning with Sea Shepherd, and I
Mm,
spent, just under 7 years on the ship. So I did quite a number of the Antarctic campaigns. And I
mm,
think I started out quite naive. I went into it thinking that it was not going to happen on my watch. I wasn't going to see a whale harpooned. I was there to stop it from happening.
yeah.
But I think the first time I actually saw that with my own eyes, it just set me off on this like whole like life path then to just do everything in my power to try and prevent such atrocious incidences from ever happening. I didn't want to see animals die. I don't think animals should be killed. I don't think they should be exploited in any way. And so I think being a part of those campaigns and getting involved in direct action quite early on
Mm.
just is what led me into doing what I do now, which is overseeing the investigations at Viva.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting actually, because a lot of people kind of come into it from maybe the food aspect, or they see something which makes a connection, but you really just jumped straight into the direct action, which a lot of people do later down the line, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because at the time I professionally trained as a librarian. So
right.
I was working at the University of Sheffield in the Science and Engineering Library.
Mm,
And, I was doing a bit of, like the stall outreach and doing dime shows and vegan festivals and things
mm,
like that for Sea Shepherd. And a
yeah,
lot of the questions I would get asked was, people would say to me, well, what's it like in Antarctica? What do you see when you're going up against the
yeah,
Japanese whale fleet at the time? And of course, I couldn't answer that. So I think what I really wanted to do was get that first-hand experience to be
yeah,
able to then have a personal connection to the issues that I was talking about and
yeah.
really improve my activism and connect with people by sharing those stories.
Yeah. I mean, the personal connection, it kind of like rings true for me as well when you're talking about that, because I feel as if it strengthens your argument with the members of the public when they're saying this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen, that can't possibly happen. We have this when we do the vigils, when we
Mhm.
do saves, the humane deaths. The animals don't know what's happening. We do this because we know that we can kind of tell the members of the public actually what happens, and say
Yeah.
that we've been there. We know what happens. What you're saying is wrong. And you're right. Obviously, I mean, seeing animals up close getting killed like that, as horrific as it must be, strengthens your resolve, I suppose, but also you kind of like your argument for telling people that this thing is actually going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you come to work with Viva? Because obviously I know you from all of your amazing work, the investigation work with Viva. So how did you come to work for Viva?
Yeah, at the time it was 2018. So I was doing some of the West Africa campaigns with Sea Shepherd against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. And I was just on a break. So I was home for a month. I'd come back for a wedding and saw the job advertised for a campaigns manager. And I think what really appealed to me about the job at Viva was it was combining, again, sort of office-based work, kind of project management, budget management type of stuff that, you know, is my background in terms of information management, I suppose. But then also having another side to that where I could actually still really be doing frontline activism. As be, you know, I could be going out doing events, I can be doing the street action stuff and
Yeah,
still getting to engage with people about the issues that I was so passionate about. And I
yeah,
think it really did take something special like the job at Viva to pull me away from doing the Sea Shepherd work.
yeah, yeah. So could you talk us through, the process for you deciding as a group or as an individual to do an undercover investigation, like working on the particular subject, and then actually going through the process, and then actually getting the information out into the public domain at the right time and in the right way?
Yeah, this is a really difficult question because no two investigations are ever
Yeah,
the same, and the start of them always grow out of something different each time. I mean, generally, I would say that a lot of the information comes to us through just a generic tip-off. So that can be anything from somebody that's just walking their dog and has seen something that's not quite sitting right with them, or we can get industry whistleblowers. We've had ex-workers speak out before. One of our big pig investigations in 2020 actually grew out of a tip-off that came from somebody that had been to the farm for an interview. Actually, they wanted to work on this particular farm. It's called Flat House Farm in
yeah,
Leicester.
yeah.
And they'd seen an electric prod being used, which shouldn't have been used on the pigs at the time. So he was kind of just a bit, oh, this doesn't sit right with me, and actually spoke out about that at the time.
So this is someone who was actually prepared to go and get a job, obviously using animals and potentially being involved in the care and then the death of the animals as well. And even he said that was what he saw was wrong. Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's not always from somebody that's a vegan animal rights activist. You know, we are a nation of animal lovers, and you do get this kind of sense that when people, even if they work in the industry, if they see something untoward going on, they want it to be
Mhm.
talked about. They want it to be seen.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do get a lot of tip-offs, and that kind of starts the investigation, I suppose. But I think when you think undercover investigation, you just automatically think that it's all creeping around in the middle of the night and, you know, going into all these dark corners, which it is. But we spend a lot of time researching as well, because one of the key things when you're trying to get an expose out there and you're trying to secure your media exclusive, you've got to think about what makes it an interesting story, because people are just going to turn away from animal cruelty. It's horrendous to
Yeah.
see some of the things that our investigators film. It's really traumatic stuff.
Mhm.
And you don't just want to present that as just as it is, you know, you need a story to go with it. And a lot of the times that comes through connecting the supply chain. So you hear time and time again, oh, well, this isn't my farm, this isn't in
Yeah.
our country, this doesn't happen here, we have the highest animal welfare standards in the world.
Yeah.
That's not true a lot of the time. You know, we're showing exactly what we see. And I get really annoyed by this whole messaging from the industry about having transparency from farm to fork, because you can't just go in a supermarket and pick up a packet of bacon and know exactly what farm that pig's come from. It's really, really difficult to find out exactly, you know, where that animal lived, how they were reared even. We have really poor labeling systems, so you don't even know if the product you're buying, whether that animal's been out, like lived outside, or if they've been part of a factory farming system. You know, we talk about free range, but like the amount of free ranged animals is
Yeah.
so small. And a lot of the time, you know, investigations have shown us that animals are not actually living that much better lives by having access to a range and things like that. So yeah, it is a lot of research in companies, it's tracing these supply chains, it's reviewing reports, it's getting to learn a lot about the ways in which we farm animals, what's allowed, what's not allowed,
Mhm.
because our animal welfare laws, although we say that some of the highest in the world, they're actually
Yeah.
really, really low. And it's very difficult to show when, I guess, a violation's happening, or even to get people held accountable when we can
Mhm.
when we can prove that there's been a violation of animal welfare law. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to get them held accountable for that.
Yeah. So I know there's obviously been a lot of discussion within the movement about, obviously the RSPCA,
Mm.
and kind of like their part in the RSPCA assured and the red track and everything. And kind of like from within the movement, it's been about why are we focusing on the RSPCA? Because really that's a welfarist argument, and not a like abolitionist. But I mean, from my point of view, maybe naively, but I kind of think that letting the members of the public know that these are not bad apples, that these are not isolated farms or isolated incidents. And you're talking about the free range ones as well. We showed some footage recently from Pignorant. We did a stall where we were showing the free range pigs, and people were in tears watching it.
Yeah.
So can you kind of what sort of like feedback do you get about we shouldn't be worried about the RSPC because they're not a vegan organisation, but then balance that with getting the information out to the masses really about this is wrong, this is why you need to be vegan.
Yeah, yeah, it's a difficult one, and it brings about all these kind of arguments between whether you're an abolitionist or whether you're a welfarist.
Yeah,
And fundamentally, I would say we're all should be abolitionists
yeah,
without a doubt. The one thing that we're striving to achieve here is total animal liberation, and that uncompromising, that's what we want. But at the same time, I think I've become very pragmatic. I don't think I was in my early days. I think I was a very angry youth as well about it. But I've learned that, I guess, as much as I hate to say it, the world's not going to go vegan overnight. It's probably not going to go vegan in my lifetime. So I recognize that in order to not just sustain, I guess, my own mental health about the whole thing, but just to kind of sustain my activism and the ways in which I campaign,
mm,
I'm okay with asking for short-term things. Like we're taking steps on a ladder, essentially,
yeah,
taking these pragmatic steps to improve
mm,
the lives for animals until we can
mm,
have total animal liberation.
yeah,
So yeah, it's difficult. And with the RSPCA, I think the reason why it's so crucial that that investigation has happened and that we're talking about the RSPCA short scheme now is because the RSPCA are one of the most reputable charities in the
mm,
country. And it's misleading of them to say that they protect all animals when actually they only protect a few animals. And they're obviously
mm,
our companion animals. They're interested in dogs, they're interested in cats. They're not interested if we report farmed animal cruelty to
yeah,
them. They don't
yeah,
investigate it, they don't
yeah,
prosecute it anymore.
yeah,
So I think this whole like rebranding has been really misleading. And I hate and I really don't like criticizing other animal protection groups because, there's space for all of us. But it's just really disappointing because they are misleading people and they get a lot of money by
yeah,
misleading people. And they
yeah,
have this whole assurance scheme that
mhm,
is essentially proving animal cruelty. And that's not
yeah.
acceptable, in my opinion.
Yeah, so it's almost like the RSPCA. I mean, in my mind, I've talked to my husband about this as well a great length, and we sort of see the RSPCA as having like two parts to it. One is the protection part of it, which you talked about the cats and the dogs, domestic animals, usually the birds, the wildlife. The other side is the farmed animals, which they completely condone the cruelty, and they're actually part of it. And really,
Mhm.
if they got rid of that part of it, people would probably be more on board with the other side of it. And actually, that's where they started from, really, didn't they? I mean, they were
Yeah,
created for that part of the actual cruelty part, rather
yeah.
than let's condone this particular type of cruelty because it's on a bigger scale.
Yeah, and I think what's most upsetting to me is like again, I know we shouldn't be speciesist in any way, but my kind of real passion is marine wildlife.
Yeah,
And any campaigns that I do on fish or any undercover investigations that we do relating to fish are the
yeah,
ones that I really kind of
mm,
throw my entire heart into.
yeah,
And on our most recent salmon investigation that we did in Scotland, the majority of these farms are RSPCA assured. And as part of the kind of, I mean, I won't go into the whole issues with salmon farming in general, but they do suffer from these parasitic sea lice outbreaks.
yeah,
And some of the systems that they have in place to manage these outbreaks have
yeah,
been scientifically proven to cause pain, and they
yeah,
kill tens of thousands of salmon every single year.
yeah,
And the RSPCA assured are okay with that. And when I wrote to them to say, I think you'd really need to take a look at yourself, like check yourself, because what you're approving just is not okay.
yeah,
And they responded back to me and just said that, Atlantic salmon suffer from sea lice in the same ways that dogs and cats suffer from ticks and fleas.
yeah,
And I was like, well, surely if you have got a dog, say, and you are not treating the dog for ticks or fleas, and then, heartbreakingly, the animal dies because of these infestations, the RSPCA would investigate you. They would look into you
yeah,
as a
yeah.
person
Mm,
mistreating an animal. And it's happened. There was a lady in Grimsby. It didn't take
mm,
much research to find somebody that's actually been prosecuted for not using correct parasitic control measures on their
mm,
companion animals. So then I was like, you've got all these thousands upon thousands of salmon
yeah,
are dying because of these parasites. Why are you not investigating this? Why are you
yeah,
saying that that's okay?
yeah.
So it's just this complete double standard that I really don't like about it,
Mm.
and specifically with salmon, I think it's worse than anything else.
Yeah, I think I mean it's kind of I think Roger Yates calls this the cat and dog brigade. The
Yeah,
kind of the RSPCA are much are tailored towards the cat and dog brigade, the furries, the cute animals, those
yeah,
sorts of animals. I mean, we have people who will go out and rescue animals, and then go home and eat one of the same species,
yeah,
and
exactly.
it's just bizarre. So you were talking about the salmon one. I mean, we actually use those leaflets and the Viva leaflets with the salmon with the lights and everything on the front, because we always need to have we're trying to balance all the different topics we have, and we need to make sure that we have fish covered as well,
Yeah,
because we understand that these animals really get a hard time because people can't make that personal connection with them. So
exactly.
we try to do what we can for them as well. So, are there any investigations that you're particularly proud of? I mean, was it these salmon ones that you've been doing, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would always say the salmon ones because they just
Mm,
don't get talked about
yeah,
enough. But I think in terms of the work that I've done at Viva and the kind of most impact I've probably
mm,
had
yeah,
was during our Flat House Farm
mm,
investigation. So this is one that we began in 2020. And as I said, it came from a tip off from somebody that had gone for an interview at the farm.
mm,
And what we uncovered at that facility was some of the worst cases of neglect in Viva's
mm,
30-year history. It was absolutely appalling, some of the things that we uncovered on that farm. And when we reported our findings to the authorities, we took it to the local authorities, so trading standards. We did actually take it to the RSPCA, even though it wasn't an RSPCA assured farm. We reported them to Red Tractor, APHA, all the kind of like bodies that you would think would then, take
yeah,
action.
yeah, mm,
So what happened in the end was Trading Standard launched their own investigation in response to what we'd sent to them,
mm,
and then took them to court. And this never happens. This is
mm,
so rare
yeah,
that anybody is kind
yeah,
of charged with animal welfare or animal
mm,
cruelty offences, that it was a
mm,
really unique case.
mm,
And even the CEO of Red Tractor actually went on Channel 4, Radio 4's Farming Today programme and admitted that our findings had caused some reputational damage.
mm.
When I heard that, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah,
that never happens. How did we
yeah,
manage that? So it was something I was really proud of, and actually being in court when the owners of that farm pleaded guilty to those animal cruelty offences. It was just like a real defining moment, I think, because
yeah,
it's so rare that that happens. And then obviously having that farm not in operation now, they actually closed down. So
mm,
we know that the pigs are not being farmed there anymore. And it sounds small, there's over 2,000 farms in this country. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
We've closed one down, but that was really important because I think, just being so close to it and seeing what was happening to those animals, it was just an awful, awful place. So
mm,
I'm really proud of the fact that it just doesn't
yeah.
exist anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying it's small, but actually it's not. It's huge for the animals. The animals who would have been removed and cared for
Yeah.
afterwards. And also, you don't know the impact of the public awareness. I mean, we did some training with my group recently about when we do outreach. We could have one person out of 50 people who we talk to on a weekend considering going and being vegan, and then that person has saved a couple of hundred animals in the year.
Yeah.
So, when your investigations go out, you're going to have that impact where a number of people will say that's it, enough, and I'm going to go vegan now. They might start by cutting out pig flesh, and then they look at other things. But it's definitely going to have an impact. You just don't know what the impact is, but obviously it
Yeah.
will have an impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really special because I
Yeah.
think, you know, when I first started at Viva as well, this was 2018, and I'd not been with the organization that long, and I actually did a talk at Vegan Camp House. So nervous. It was on the main stage. I'd only been at the organization like 6 months, and we were doing the Hogwood campaign at the time. So
I was
I was
there actually. I was there. I heard that one.
I was so traumatized by it. I had this total meltdown while I was doing this talk anyway.
No, it was
And I
great.
think
Yeah.
it kind of worked because I was so passionate about it. I just was
Yeah.
like having this meltdown. And then afterwards, somebody from the audience actually came up to me and said, I've been trying to make my boyfriend go vegan for years, and he's literally just gone vegan on the spot because of what you were saying.
Mhm.
And at that moment, like, I just had a
Yeah.
break. And I was like, oh my God, that means everything to me. You don't understand how
Yeah.
much that means to me.
Yeah.
And then even a year later, she
Mm.
messaged me again and said he's still vegan a year later because of the things
Brilliant.
that you were saying. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, like getting choked up. It's really special when you have
Mm.
that kind of connection with somebody.
Yeah.
And like you said, you don't know a lot of the time. You can't measure your successes by the number of vegans that you make because it's all about this like planting seeds, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just don't know what people are going to
Yeah.
go from a
Yeah.
conversation with you. And then,
Mm.
you know, are they going to go
Yeah.
vegan tomorrow, next week, next
Yeah.
year, 10
Mm.
years time?
Yeah. And that person that you're talking about, I suspect especially with him being a man as well, he's probably now converted other people, or he's
Yeah.
taught to other people. So it's that kind of like that wave, like that's, the wave's getting bigger and bigger and bigger,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, I hope so.
it's slow, and we can't, we as activists and outreachers, we can't measure it, but we
Mhm.
know it's definitely going in the right direction. Just
Yeah.
not quick enough, but it is going. So you talked about the stress and everything. So how do you balance your own well-being and your mental health with some of the things, the horrific things that you've seen and that you will see?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it comes with experience, and having been within the sort of animal rights movement for over 20 years now, I
Yeah.
think I've built up like a really good resilience to it, and I've learned
Mm.
to recognize what the kind of first signs for me are when I'm getting, things are getting a little bit on top of me. So I think, the advice I give to people is really learn about what secondary trauma is, learn about
Yeah.
what the trigger signs are, like what the symptoms of
Mm.
secondary trauma are,
Yeah.
and then do things for yourself. Don't feel guilty about if you need to take a break in nature, if you need to go for a
Yeah.
walk, if you need to go, like I go to the gym a lot. It's like the one place I think on the planet that I can just go and completely shut off from everything else and just
Yeah.
focus on being in the gym. It's,
Yeah.
it's really good physically, it's really good for my mental health. But then, I also can just lie on the sofa and binge watch Friends, and that, cheers me back up again. So I
Yeah.
think it's a very individual thing, and I
Yeah.
think it does just come with experience. And
Yeah.
don't always I hate this, like, oh, I feel bad, but it's not as bad as the animals. Like, you
Yeah.
can't compare suffering in any way.
Yeah.
You can't compare your experiences to other people's experiences. So just do what feels right for you, and take the break when you know that you need the break, because if you burn out, it's not good. Like, we need to have
Yeah.
sustainability in this movement. So we need people with resilience. And I think that's the most important thing that you can
Yeah.
build is resilience.
Yeah, very wise words, I have to say. I mean, when we tell, when we get new activists, we always say you need to pace yourself,
Yeah.
because you know yourself. As a new vegan, all those years ago, you're so angry, aren't you? You think you. I mean, I remember Juliet saying actually when I was talking to her that she had this like eureka moment, and she wondered. She was telling people, and she was fully expecting them to get it, and she just couldn't understand why they didn't. And most
Yeah.
vegans are like that. You think, I know this now. I'm going to tell you what it is, and people are like, why don't you get this? Why can't you see this?
Yeah.
And they get really, really angry, and obviously that takes its toll. But the other side of it is people, like the person maybe you were talking to, this guy maybe wanted to jump into activism, and people throw themselves into it, but they can't keep up the pace.
Yeah, they just do
Can't
too much.
sustain it, and they just they want to kind of save every single animal, and you can't do it that way. It's you know, I've been doing this for a long time as well, and it's, I know from my own mistakes that you've got to pace yourself, and you've got to kind of recognize that, you know, I do yoga when you do the gym. I'm also learning Greek as well. That's my kind of like switch off time. My brain's exploding with it, but I am doing it. I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
And sitting in, I mean, from 6:30 to 8:30 most evenings. I've seen most evenings because there are exceptions when I'm doing rescues. But I sit in front of the television with my husband and we just binge watch absolute crap.
You got to do it. Yeah.
You got to do it. Yeah. Otherwise, you do just go stir crazy.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So what's next for you then? Because I know you've got loads of things coming up. So what's going on with you?
Yeah, so at Viva, we've just launched our newest campaign, Are You an Animal Lover? So we're planning at the moment to be doing some street action events. We've got the first one. I know this will go out probably after we finished all the events, but we're going to be doing some street tours with giving out free hot dogs, doing some activism, doing the outreach, talking to people about, you know, our kind of perceptions of welcoming certain animals into our homes and loving them as part of the family. And then, as you said, like eating others, it just, where's the disconnect? Like we're going to try and address all of those kind of things. So
we needed to come up with Newcastle. We're desperate because we've got a really, you know, I mean, we're quite a large group for a small independent group, but we needed to come up with Newcastle.
All right, I will feed that back because I definitely think we need to get up.
We've had Peter. Well, Peter came up a couple of months ago, but we need you to come up and do some like big like visual stuff, you know, because we've got, you know, we'd really love to work with you up here. It'd be brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'll feed that back. And then just some other bits and pieces we're doing. So hopefully we're going to have we're going to have another expose out a bit later in the year.
Right.
Can't really say too much about that. Yeah. And then I'm going to be doing some more work on the farm salmon issue. So I'm going to be continuing to campaign against farm salmon up in Scotland. So I'm really looking forward to getting started on that again.
Yeah. So you're busy all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Apart from when you're doing your gym.
Yeah. That's like peace.
With presumably no phones. Then you go back to your phone and then there's about 50 messages waiting for you there.
Yeah, exactly that.
Well, we're coming to the end of the time together now, so it's been really interesting talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing, you know, all of your work and all of your passion and everything that you do, and keep on doing what you do. You're absolutely brilliant. I mean, I've been watching you from the sidelines for a number of years now, and I think you're absolutely incredible. So, so keep doing what you're doing. So I'm going to sign off now and say this is Anna Amelia from North East Animal Rights, saying thank you to Lex Rigby, Head of Investigations at Viva, and saying thank you to those of you for watching as well. Goodbye for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.